Hey guys, welcome to At Home with Shelly Lynn. I made this cake for my son's birthday. It's a very simple and easy cake, so let's go ahead and get started. I have shown you how I stack and fill my cakes many times, so if you want to see that part, I invite you to please go and watch my other cake videos in my custom cake playlist. This cake is chocolate with Oreos and cream on the inside. After I crumb coat, I make sure it's fully chilled before I add the final coat of buttercream. I love using this flip method because it helps me achieve very sharp and even edges. It's really almost foolproof. I did have my cakes in the freezer. I just prefer putting them in there, so there was some condensation. So what I did is I used a napkin to lightly blot off any dewy drops to help the buttercream adhere to the crumb coat. Make sure not to forget to use a piece of wax or parchment paper cut to the size of the top of your cake. This prevents the icing from sticking to your board. Also, make sure to bring your icing all the way down to the bottom of your board because essentially that's the top of your cake. So you want to make sure it's completely flat and straight. This process may take you a while. Just keep covering any gaps and use a bench scraper or any other flat smoothing tool until it's to your liking. In the video, the cake kind of looks like it may have some rippling at the bottom, but it's actually just a glare from the scalloped edges of my cake board. After I have a smooth finished coat all the way around the side of my cake and I can't see any cake peeking through, I toss it in the fridge or the freezer for 20 minutes to an hour. Okay, so now for the fun part. I gently loosen the cake from the cake board and prepare to flip it over. When I lift it off, I set it down first so that I can clean the cake board itself. Even though I won't be using this board as my base, I still like it to be clean so that I get a clean finish on the cake itself and so that it's more stable while decorating. Now I'm just going to gently pull off the parchment paper and see if there's any gaps on the top of my cake. To my surprise, it's pretty smooth, so there's no need to fill in any gaps or air bubbles. But if there were, you would just use a small dab of buttercream to fill them in. I am, however, going to need to remove the excess from the edges just to clean it up a little bit and make the top completely flat. To do this, I just use a small icing spatula with an angled tip on it and I gently scrape off the edges clean. Because the cake is cold, the buttercream is very firm and easy to remove. To avoid making too much colored buttercream, I find it easier to airbrush my cake. This does make it a little bit more difficult to cover up a mistake because you only have color on the surface. So if you accidentally smudge or create a dent in your cake, it could be difficult to smooth it out again and color match it. So airbrush at your own discretion. Also, make sure that you're not too close or too far from the cake. You want to be about 6 inches away and keep it moving. You can always darken the buttercream, but you can't lighten it. I find that if your cake is chilled, it's easier to use a napkin to lightly blot off any drops from the sprayer. So to avoid creating drops, spray a napkin before you begin airbrushing your cake. After I was done, I put my cakes in the refrigerator to sit and chill for about an hour. Because my cake was super cold and filled with Oreo cookies, I couldn't just simply insert my bubble straws. So I used a dowel rod to help create my holes and then I inserted my bubble straws to create support for my top tier. Then I just cut the tips off of each straw flush with the cake. Using a pin needle with a pearl end, I add my ribbon to the border of the cake. This helps secure the ribbon so it doesn't fall off. And I also like using these pins because they're more noticeable and help me not to forget to remove them prior to cutting the cake. As you can see, there's a handprint on the side of my red tier. I didn't want to airbrush over it because I was worried that the color wouldn't match and it might be a little too dark, so I made the decision to add some drips to the side of the cake. Using Choco Maker cake drip from Walmart, I created drips to one side of the top tier and then on the opposite side of the bottom tier. This actually worked out perfectly because it brightened up the cake and it was cohesive with the Pokemon themed colors. Besides, Bob Ross would say.
And see what happens. As you paint, you'll see all kind of things happening on your canvas, and very soon you learn to use all these beautiful little things that happen. I think in one of the earlier shows I mentioned, we don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
Happy accidents indeed. Thank you, Bob Ross. To the top of the cake, I used buttercream to create little swirls, and I added some sprinkles to them. At this point, my son was getting really excited seeing his cake come together. He was asking me all kinds of questions about it, so this is fun to do while your kids are watching because they're very honest. So when you see them get excited, you know that you're doing a good job. Anyway, to the swirls, I topped every other one with a gumball in different colors. He thought that that looked very cool, and he cannot wait to have one of those gumballs. This was the part that I actually wanted to create on my own. My plan was to create a Pokeball out of chocolate, and inside was going to be a Charmander filled with sprinkles, and he was going to crack it open when we sang happy birthday to him. But due to limited time, we opted to use a toy instead. I think it still turned out pretty cool, but I really wish that I could have done that chocolate ball. But that would be a really cool idea for you guys if you guys are able to do that. To the top of the ball, I just added a little bit of buttercream to the bottom of the Pikachu and stuck him on top. I bought these sugar sheets from Party City, but you can get better quality ones from Amazon. I got 3 of them. The first one that I opened was all cracked up and I had to throw it away. The one that I'm using right now was really dry, but I made do with it. If you watched some of my videos before, you'll know that I really love using edible paper and markers to create banners and name plaques. It makes it a lot easier to design them because fondant is super soft and you have to wait a couple of days for it to set and dry. That way you can color over them. This way you can get it done while designing your cake and not worry about it cracking when you're putting it flush to the side of your cake. It's much more pliable and easier to work with. We were able to create a stencil with the Pokemon font, and I cut it out using our Cricut. I did have to use the inside and outside of the stencil to complete his name, so don't discard any of the pieces, and you can always save them for future projects. I really love using dual side markers so that you can use the fine side to define and draw, and the brush side to shade and color in. I find my markers on Amazon because the ones off the shelf don't work as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you watch as I finish up this name plaque. Now that the name is all finished, I need to cut it out, but it was a little tricky because, as I had mentioned, the sugar sheet was dry. With an X-Acto knife from the Dollar Tree, I carefully, and I mean carefully, I traced the lines of the border to cut it out. Had my sugar sheet been fresh and soft, I could have just used scissors to cut it out. But because it was so dry, it did keep cracking and I was left with jagged edges. So I tried to cover it up by tracing the outside with black so you couldn't really see the cracked edges. I did the same thing with the number 8.
I repeat, no one will ever know.
The rest of the design is pretty easy. I'm just gonna add some borders, add my side toppers, and finish with accent pieces. So sit back and relax while I finish off this cake. And that's a wrap. So easy, right? I wanted to create a more elaborate design, but I had to remind myself to keep it simple because I was making a lot of other goodies too, like sugar cookies, cake pops, Oreo pops, Rice Krispie treats, and pretzel rods. And when planning a party with decor, desserts, and food, it's best to keep it super simple. Everything was pulled together quite nicely. Everyone was most excited to see the cake, but enjoyed all of it to the fullest. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching in entirety. It really means the world to me. If you should have any suggestions on what you'd like to see me create, I am completely open. Hit me with your best shot. Come on! On your way out, please consider clicking on that like button. Subscribe if you're new here, and also hit that notification bell to receive an alert when I post a video. Again, thank you so much for watching, and remember, always shine bright.